So, with the flail of poverty beating down hard upon the grain and chaff of destitute humanity in this country, how best should the Nigerian government deal with the growing hunger crisis? Well, according to Senator Jimoh Ibrahim, the answer lies in urgently replacing the cash transfer initiative currently being implemented by the Tinubu government and replacing it with food vouchers. But what is a food voucher? Well, it's a type of government-driven humanitarian assistance that provides people affected by crisis with vouchers to buy food. But critics argue that cash is generally preferred over food vouchers because it provides more flexibility and choice. But Senator Ibrahim believes food vouchers will not only eliminate corruption by getting rid of the issue of cash management, it'll also be more effective in addressing the hunger crisis. So, how so? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Senator representing Ondo South in the National Assembly, Senator Jimoh Ibrahim. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. And you?
Good.
Good. Tell us why you're suggesting that the government should provide food vouchers in preference to the cash transfer initiative. You obviously think that it's a more effective way of addressing the hunger crisis in Nigeria.
Yes, absolutely. One of the major problems that can undermine legitimacy of a government, acceptance of a government, is poverty. One of the instruments of social crisis and war is poverty. Driven down, poverty could be generic, but driven down or distilled down to food insecurity. We don't want to have any crisis in the government. This is a very good, fairly running government, and we don't need any crisis. So when you solve food crisis, then you have high level of legitimacy of acceptance of government policy and desire. Now, we have the present government has introduced a lot of palliatives here and there. What I'm saying is that collapse the palliative account in the central bank to one digital account, and then print food vouchers, 100,000 per person, to 20 million down through Nigeria who are in need of that. Tell them is for 1 year, and after 1 year, no more. So you'll be able to prepare. Now, 20 million people you know already because you're already sending money for palliative, for cash transfer, so you know really those people who are bad, and the data is there. Funding is not difficult because you already have various palliative accounts.
Yeah, but what's the point of changing?
Now, the point of changing is that, one, you eliminate corruption. You give 10 billion naira to a state governor, you decide to do roads, that is the definition of palliative. The presidency have done very well by giving 10 billion assistance to states, but the presidency will not go to the state to tell the governor what to do with this 10 billion in the definition of foods or palliative. But when you give 10 billion voucher, and nobody can take more than 100,000 voucher at a time, the voucher are serially numbered, and they are bank communicating. So obviously, there's no way the governor can steal even 200,000.
You can't go and sell the vouchers. Yeah.
So the vouchers are there. So it means that you are distilling, percolating down, your policy, to the people that are directly affected by the insurgency of food crisis. And that will really help. Now you do solar power, borehole. Look, even if you suspend your capital project for 1 year in 100 years to face food palliative, it's not bad. If you do fantastic road, fantastic airport, it's people are saying they are hungry. So when you have these beautiful programs and policies, that you have successfully in establishing, but if people are hungry, those policies doesn't become popular because the one thing that cover and destroy the whole thing is that I'm hungry, I need food. So you say, I've done the airport, come and see how beautiful it is. I'm hungry. So you see this become the rhetoric, and then of course this become very destructive. So we are not saying what government is doing is not good by transferring cash, but the issue is that even if you print vouchers, you reduce inflation. Money supplies disappears. But if you are going to put 65,000 naira or 50,000 naira to 25 million Nigeria, see how much cash you are printing. See how much money supply. See how much inflation that is going to cause. See how much that will translate to virtually everything. But you are printing paper as voucher. There is no any money effects. You're going to spend some little money to do that. And vouchers can be destroyed after usage. The voucher you give in January cannot be used in February. It won't be used in March. So obviously you have this area. Take it to the bank. You can change it to Naira if you so want. But this 100,000 is for your family or for yourself. You obtain 100,000, your wife take 100,000, children above 18, provided they are no more than 20 million. Now, when we go to IMF and World Bank, we bring an application for food for voucher. You get reply in 3 months. If we bring application for infrastructural financing, you get reply in 3 years. Because there are so many applications that pile up there for the same purpose. But this one is emergency intervention.
Well, I'm going to come to because you were at those IMF World Bank meetings.
Yes.
I'm going to come to that in a minute. But now you first raised that voucher issue in Washington whilst you were at that IMF meeting. That's about 10 days ago. And the briefing where you made this suggestion was attended by Nigeria's central bank governor, Yemi Cardoso, as well as the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, and other Nigerian government officials. What was their reaction to your suggestion?
It was acceptable. It was acceptable by all because it's not difficult to do. The good thing about
it is, do you think they're going to do
it? They can't take decision there. This is a policy matter. They can only report back to government, as I will report back to Senate and to the Senate President and the Senate Committee on Poverty Alleviation. They will also report to Mr. President. But the good thing is that the central bank governor have data. He explained that he is a possession of some data that could be useful, in time of, in fact, that made him to go into this monetary money printing issue and inflation control. And then the finance minister came up very aptly about the effort of government, but there seems to be a long-time effect, brilliant first-class policies to address poverty in the long term. But I'm feeling hungry now. I'm feeling hungry now.
Yeah.
So the short-term effect is what government have to, navigate between policy balancing, between the long-run effects of the policy as well as the short-run effect of the policy. The Tinubu administration, give it to honestly speaking, I will come to that very shortly, is doing very well. But the very well cannot be translated to popular acceptance or popularity government if the short-run effects of I'm feeling hungry is not resolved as quickly as possible.
The question about whether he's doing really well depends on who you ask.
Well, it's subjectively objective and it's contingent.
But I think there's an interesting point you made there, which is about corruption and the fact that corruption often goes hand in hand with these palliative programs. I think to that extent, certainly, your suggestion seems to make considerable sense. But obviously it will have to be looked at a bit more closely by a lot of people and assessed as well. But isn't it rather astonishing that your party, the APC, is still trying to figure out how to deal with the pain caused by the removal of subsidy, the subsequent cost of living crisis, 18 months after the reforms were introduced? You still don't know how to deal with the pain, do you?
We do. Because the independent variables are responding to the economic dependable variables. For example, there's a growth in the debt ratio to GDP. You know that, which is about...
Well, to be honest, I don't mean to interrupt you, I apologize, but I'm going to come to the variables in a minute, because I know you've got a very good head on your shoulders when it comes to doing those assessments.
Okay, let's
not conflate the two issues.
Yeah.
What I'm curious to know is why 18 months later, after you took out the subsidy, after you introduced the reforms, after you tried to take this country on the path of structural change, you're still flailing about trying to figure out how to deal with the consequences of those reforms.
The consequences of the reform are the palliative issues. And we're even reforming the palliative itself. Because nothing is sacrosanct about government. Government policies and government and apparatus of government is subject to reformers and structural upgrading. So if you talk about strategy of what Tinubu coming to restructure the economy, it's nothing new. They are restructuring policies in England, in America, all over the world on a daily basis.
But
he came,
yeah.
just a minute, he came with the idea that I cannot be passing the economy because we're in a financial dangerous lane. Should we continue, we go into the ocean, we never come back. So let me take this very painful, but the consequences are you'll be abused.
Yeah, but
you might even lose your legitimacy.
But you're the one who's making the point persistently since I started talking to you here that it doesn't matter what you say, I'm hungry.
Yes.
So that's really the issue here.
I'm hungry.
We're not here. We're not talking about what he's done, or we're talking about the consequences of what he's done and what he has tried to do to alleviate those consequences.
Yes, Charles. The fact that I'm hungry does not mean that every Nigerians are hungry. We are concerned.
So now you've shifted a little bit.
When you say I'm hungry, is it not generic? It's a general statement. It's subjectively objective to your income. What I'm saying is that I'm concerned about the 20 million Nigeria to 30 million Nigeria that are they are in the net of poverty. And the government is saying we will take them out of the net by transferring cash to them. Fantastic policy, well done. But I'm saying you could do it better. Because doing that will lead to inflation, right? Money supply will increase.
You mean it has already led to inflation?
Yeah, so therefore...
Because presumably they are implementing.
So therefore, drive it by vouchers. And if you do that, then you have economic stability. You see, when you introduce reform, consequences are unforeseeable. They are foreseeable consequences, which you can see that will happen.
Well, if you're a government and you're telling us that the consequences of removing subsidy, which Nigerians have been discussing this for years, that the consequences were not foreseeable.
No.
You don't deserve to be in government.
You are missing this, John. I said consequences are foreseeable and some of them are unforeseeable.
Yeah.
And you cannot dispute that.
But you must have foreseen the consequences of removing subsidy.
The one we saw coming, we have policies in place to arrest and mitigate the effect of that. More we see come that we don't know. What is the difference between a rich man and a poor man? A rich man could see the future, something he can see that a poor man cannot see. Not that they are no brainer. In fact, the poor man is more better than the rich man in terms of upstairs there. But if you have the capacity to distill the future, you have gold in your hands. Well, and that's probably the job of the prophets. If you can see tomorrow today, you won't have any mistake tomorrow. Well, but there are certain things that economic reform and structural adjustment, when Babangida introduced it, don't you see the pains there? When you have structural adjustment program during Babangida, which even the military government. Immediately you see that this situation will lead to X, Y, Z. And the president introduced palliative measures to control that. But the thing went out of hand. Because again, there's a global economic challenges. Which Nigeria cannot...
There's always a story, isn't there?
This is the narrative.
There's always a story, isn't there?
Nigeria is not immune from global consequences.
Anyway, the fact is, Senator, that tension is building up in the economy.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure you will admit that. You were at those IMF World Bank meetings and you've been attending them for 9 years.
Yes.
What contribution is all that making to the Nigerian economy? What's the point of people like you going there every year?
There are many reasons why I go to IMF that I cannot disclose here.
Besides going to shop in Washington. Well, I'm curious.
I wish I can shop for these 3 days that I fly in and then fly out and all that.
Right.
There's no time. The key point here is that IMF was established to help developing country economy. Because after the World War, we realized that developing companies were overspent in their balance sheets. We look at the balance of trade and look at source of economic narrative. So this World Bank and IMF comes to rescue countries from these economic misdirections. Policy sensitization, and ensuring that support are given in emergency. And that is why we said the other time, remember, when the government first came, I said, borrow money to run the economy and borrow adequately. People said I'm stupid. Now what are you doing now? What is the application about every year?
You know what I find always extraordinary, because I have attended those IMF World Bank meetings in the past. What I find extraordinary is that the world to them is just like something on a computer screen. And they're checking off numbers and saying, right, okay, you need to do A, B, C, D, and C. Whereas you're someone elected by the people of Nigeria, and your sensitivities should be much more for those people rather than the kind of the detached sense that you get from the IMF.
Yes, we are in the contemporary times. This is not the classical days.
Yeah,
the classical days where you take the flag of your sovereignty and you do nothing beyond your sovereignty.
Yeah,
just a minute.
Yeah.
Economies are converging. And the convergence of economy requires that you have to be part of the global system.
Nobody
you
said
cannot
you
isolate
should
yourself and say because people elected you, so you will not look at.
Nobody said you shouldn't be part of the global system.
Or you are going to introduce an economic policy that will destroy the global system.
You
want to introduce corruption.
But you're introducing policies that are destroying your own people.
Not at all. Or you want to introduce corruption that will make citizens to have unequal opportunity in their global adventures.
Yeah, but
nobody is going to allow that one to happen.
But Senator, it is about the kind of respite that there is for the Nigerian people, isn't it? That ought to be your primary priority.
Yeah, there's respite. IMF grant loans to Nigeria. Do you come by all these infrastructure loans, or the infrastructure loans that you get in billions of dollars? Do you put money in IMF? How much do you pay as your membership fee in a year? You go down to draw all this money, and if I borrow you money, I should dictate your economic monetary policy. You don't longer own your monetary and fiscal policy if 90% of your loan is coming from Central Bank, from IMF. IMF will want to take charge of your monetary policy because I gave you $3 billion. Your budget is $8 billion for a whole country. I alone as IMF, I fund $5 billion out of it. And you want to have independence of your monetary and economic policy. From where that will happen?
Well,
it's not going to happen. Otherwise, if you want to have sovereignty of your, which I think is, to me, is nonsensical. If you want to have your sovereignty of your economic policy, don't come borrow. Stay there alone and be the world.
Right. You've talked persistently about borrowing now, and you mentioned earlier about variables, and I said we would return to it. So let's look at all the variables in the Nigerian economy. Is the government conscious of those variables, especially with regard to taking out loans?
Yes. Nigeria GDP to debt ratio is 49.5%. Britain is 100%. America, 125%. And China, 48%. So its government not do excellently well.
Well, I mean, they have, if you compare it in real terms,
yes.
I'm not talking about figures on a computer.
Those are the data determine the real time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if you look at the level of poverty, if you look at the level of money in circulation within Nigeria, the level of sort of alleviation of stress that people have in this country compared to the US, the UK, healthcare, all kinds of things. I mean, you can see that the gap is absolutely enormous.
You cannot compare any economy with the US economy. Nigeria, China, Britain, you cannot compare those economies with the US. For example, you say US is owing, I think the last loan for US is about $48 trillion. That's the loan right now in the US, 48 trillion or $148 trillion. Now, if you say that is loan, that is nothing to the US. Why? The economy is dollarized.
Well, you're making the point that I'm making.
Globally, it's dollarized. So US can just say, if you say America is owing you, they just take ink and paper and go to the treasury and print out the money and send it to the aircraft to you and pay you off. Can Nigeria print naira and send it to China to pay off?
Well, that's exactly.
So that is not comparable. You look at that. Now we come to economy here. What is Nigeria doing with a GDP debt ratio of 49.5% when you have 100% in England? It means that the value of economy in England today is the equal value that was borrowed, that is owed to other countries. It means that the value of economy in America today is 25% above that value that is borrowed by America. Even in China, that is excellently doing well, 55% of the economy is only what they have at hand. 45% is what they borrow. Nigeria, 49.5% of the totality of the economy is what is borrowed.
It's your ability to deal with the shock
Yes.
to your economy and the system. That's what is the difference.
If you are talking about asset felicitations, I will agree with you. Because the capacity of the manager to flog asset around, to turn around to revenue, is what is important. But the reform has a very painful effect in the short run. But in the long run, let me give you an example before you cut me short there. Nigeria economy by next year will grow by 3.5%.
That's a projection.
Last year it grew by 3.4%.
That's a projection.
That was the projection last year. This year matches the projection. Next year is 3.5% growth. Now you will see that things like inflation will come down by 25%. That is the projection. Now, if it comes down by 25% in year 2 of the administration, in year 3, another 25% off. In year 4, you are getting things stabilized.
Well, we will need to see that because inflation hasn't actually been coming down. It's been going. It's been wobbly. Let's put it that way. It's come down.
Actually, it's
at one point.
Tiny.
It came down a tiny bit, and it went up again.
Yeah.
But let me move away from that because you are the chairman of the Interparliamentary Committee worldwide. What kind of parliamentary engagement do you have at the IMF and those World Bank meetings that you attend all the time? Is there any impact for the Nigerian people?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that the essence of interparliamentary engagement at the World Bank is to set up the parliamentary arm of the World Bank, to review all the economic policies in the face of the law, to distill law into economic policies and stability, to ensure that there is harmonization and that the economy has face of the law, so that we can reduce draconian power abuse, and then we can also see that we are flowing globally, on the same plate. So if you say, for example, you borrow for corruption, for infrastructure, we want to know what is the
borrow for corruption.
Borrow for corruption.
That was a slip of, that was a worrying slip from you there.
For corruption, or you borrow for infrastructure, we want to know the level of abandoned projects in your country. So things like that. So we want to see that the law actually interferes. So parliaments all over the world, are engaged in making laws. So when I go for Geneva Convention, in which I was even the interim president last year worldwide, we try to see how does the law interact with economic policy.
Right.
And we're going to start that very locally here. As chairman of the parliamentary committee, I'm going to create 36 state speakers of the House of Assembly to see how does the state laws reflect into the federal laws, so that we work in the same
synergy there.
Not that one state is making
we're almost out of time. You are from Ondo State. The governorship election there is coming up. How do you see things there from your perspective?
Well, anybody running for election in Ondo State today is just wasting his time, because APC will win. So what's the purpose of wasting your money?
Yeah, I suppose you could put it that way. It's a bit like Donald Trump saying anybody running for election in America, we know they're going to cheat. So
whatever. Once you're on the ticket of APC, you don't have any much to worry about, because
you'll use federal muscle and get things to go your way.
The legitimacy that the party enjoy across Nigeria.
Right.
We just left Edo, and then you know what happened. So obviously we are in Ondo, and Ondo will become a thing of the past, and then we engage Anambra and other places. The issue is that nobody can do it better than the party has at now. So we have no good alternative, to what is happening.
Right. Okay. I don't know whether I should congratulate you or whether I should cry listening to you talking.
What you crying? You already said about.
But let me find a middle ground. Let me find a middle ground and say that it's been a pleasure as always. Because you are quite a charming person as an individual.
Thank you.
It's really nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Senator Jimoh Ibrahim represents Ondo South in the National Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.